hockey. Yeah.
My favorite. It's Judd's Hockey Show.
How about Judd's Hockey Show mixed with reckless speculation hockey show mixed with facts that of interest that involve the Wild as the March 3rd trade deadline approaches? Because today's show is all of those things, Judd and Declan, as always. And I don't think we were going to probably do a Judd's Hockey Show just off a 2-1 win in a shootout against Dallas. Now, that was probably a big enough deal to do one, but it's a Friday night game. But during the course of the game, I think it was third period, there were strong rumblings in the press box that Declan Goff, the Wild, was involved in a trade for a guy that you recommended probably a month ago, Ryan O'Reilly of the St. Louis Blues, who was going to be moved. The question was where. And the initial steam was, oh my God, the Wild's involved in the Ryan O'Reilly trade, which of course led most of us to think they're getting Ryan O'Reilly. Very interesting. Well, as everybody probably knows by now, they did not.
They technically did.
Yes, for like 15 seconds. They facilitated the trade, if I can get that word right, and served as the third team in what was a St. Louis to eventually they sent O'Reilly, the Wild did, to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the Wild's involvement was sending a prospect, Josh Pollard, to the Blues for O'Reilly, who is going to be a free agent. And then the most important thing that the Wild did was they retained 25% of O'Reilly's remaining salary and traded him to the Maple Leafs for a 2025 fourth-round pick. The Blues also then retained 25% of O'Reilly's salary. And here's where the big part of the deal comes in. The Maple Leafs sent Mikhail Abramov and Adam Gaudette along with a 2023 first-round pick, Ottawa's 23 third-round pick, and the Leafs 24 second-round choice to St. Louis then. And technically that trade then added another pending free agent, Nola Chari, in Toronto. So the Maple Leafs, in search of their first cup since 1967, amazingly enough, and in search of their first playoff series win, I think since 2004, pick up two veteran players. This, to me, Declan, says one thing. And keep in mind, so the Wild has salary cap room right now as the deadline approaches to play with, but they do not have salary cap room in the offseason. So they can't keep anybody they trade for the most part. This, to me, says that whether you like this or not, Bill Guerin is going down the path of being far more of a seller than he is a buyer, and that he realizes that this team right now is not worth making a big investment in. And to that, I agree completely.
Yeah, the Wild were basically used as a mule here because, the rumblings that were taking place in the third period that you also tipped me off on, I was saying, oh, wait a minute here. If they're involved in the sweepstakes for ROR, Kalen Addison is scratched. I started doing immediate number crunching of, well, if Addison's scratched again, he's probably part of that trade, right? And then trying to think, okay, are they going to give up a future second, maybe even a future first? And then in classic, I am the clickbait officer at Purple Daily, Judd. And then the Wild PR tweet out, we are involved in a 3-team trade with no players listed. Just got to click the link to watch, which is very smart by them. And in the first sentence, it says the Wild have acquired, or I think it was the second or third sentence, the Wild have acquired Ryan O'Reilly. In addition, the Wild have also traded Ryan O'Reilly to the Toronto Maple Leafs for, the fourth-round pick and all the other moving and shaking in there. So to me, after, digesting this immediately and then sleeping on it overnight, the Wild were used as a mule to make this trade happen between Kyle Dubas and the St. Louis Blues. And by the way, he's going down in a blaze here. Even if they don't get out of the first round or win a playoff series, he is saying, I'm laying all the chips on the table, and that my successor, whoever it may be, is going to be screwed because I just traded a bunch of draft picks and I'm going to go all in, and I actually respect that from him. But the Wild side of it, they're a mule. They're probably trending towards being a seller now at the deadline. Judd, I don't know if that means you're even going to get a ton for guys like Jordan Greenway and Matt Dumba, et cetera, or maybe even Kalen Addison, who I mentioned off the top. But it doesn't seem like they're going to be heavy buyers. I mean, if that's the price for Ryan O'Reilly, and I know it's a little complicated because 3 teams were in the works, man, and he might be the best rental on the market. But if that's the price for Ryan O'Reilly, that's the table setter, right? Like as the trade deadline trickles in right here, this is where things then start to kind of get building blocks of asking prices and whatnot. So to me, I think they're trending towards being a seller.
And the O'Reilly trade, I mean, Toronto, to your point, is giving up a ton. So like that's the price of poker to really get a player like that, which the Wild's not going to pay. And I agree completely with that. Now, a couple things to clear up here. So basically, because I think the question is, well, the draft pick's what, 2025? It's a fourth round pick. So they essentially bought a fourth round pick in 25 for $74,000. Okay. The other thing is the guy that they traded, who was a fourth round pick, the Wild was not going to sign and had to by June 1st. So they put, he's a junior player. They put no value on him. So it's not like they traded a prospect that they liked. They traded a guy that they weren't planning on signing. Now, just to get this clear from Russo's story in The Athletic, when people are like, because this is confusing, and to a certain point, it just play along with this because it's the mathematics of the salary cap. So like at a certain point, you just need to know this. You don't need to know unless you really care how the sausage is made. The Wild have a little less than $3 million in cap space left right now. That amounts to the ability, according to Russo's story, to currently add approximately a $10 million player or a total of $10 million in multiple players. So to your point about, and the Wild is essentially, Bill Guerin is offering to serve in this role. So like they're not being forced to, but the Wild has the ability now to facilitate trades. I think that this no question means they're going to try and extract Dumba probably. And again, it's not going to be for a lot. But the reality is this, yes, they won 2-1 last night. Yes, they're currently in a playoff spot, but they can't score 5-on-5 goals.
Oh my
They
God.
scored another power play goal last night. They don't shoot. To be honest with you, other than Kaprizov and Zuccarello when he shoots, they've got three lines that don't score. Like they got three lines right now. Now I would argue that Boldy is in a less than ideal situation. He made another great play last night. I think when Boldy is put with the right people, he can definitely score. But
Absolutely.
right now, but there is, I believe it's 500 minutes plus, Dex, since the game in Arizona, they have not scored a goal without Kaprizov on the ice, which, if nothing else, just tells you what the personnel is at the time they're scoring goals. So power play goals, 5-on-5 goals. So they literally are left right now with three lines that aren't scoring. And Bill Guerin, you don't have to be a longtime player in GM or executive to see that this team is going nowhere. And God bless him, Philip Gustafson was great last night, but this is the exact right move. And I think there might also be a question, because I saw this out there. I think it was actually from our guy. What's our Barstool friend from Chicago?
Chief.
Chief. Okay. So, but yeah, Barstool Chief. He put out there, why would the Wild help facilitate a trade that's going to help the Blues on a rebuild when the Wild's in their division? Because somebody was going to do it. That's why. The Canucks fans are mad this morning that they didn't do that. Like the Canucks fans are like, we could have done that. Let's get something. So that's why. So like, it's not like if the Wild had said, we ain't getting involved, somebody else would. The ROR trade, right? It's not going to die because the Wild balks at that. So there are things I don't agree with that this team is currently doing. So, I guess I don't end up being a Guerin apologist, because I think some of their day-by-day decisions, especially on who's scratched and who's playing, which I want to get to with you, is really, really weird. But on this one, I think it's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with it too. There was that initial excitement that you thought they were going to potentially make a big trade, but then they ended up not making a big trade. In the meantime, though, they end up just being the middleman in this facilitating trade. And to your 5-on-5 point, hopefully they're able to kind of fix some of that, because they also haven't won a regulation game in over a month. It's been a month since they last won a regulation game, so we'll see what happens there.
I don't know what's going to get fixed, Dex. I was watching that last night again. They'll score some 5-on-5 goals, but it's not just a slump. Like they literally are. They've got guys that for the most part right now don't look like they have the confidence to score. I mean, God bless him on the shootout. Freddie Goujo's great. Like, he's got those moves. He's got that move. But last night, he got a puck in the slot and just stopped and literally looked to pass. It's like, what are you doing? Put that puck on Jake Ottinger. Get that puck on goal. And I mean, if Gustafsson doesn't absolutely stand on his head last night, they lose in regulation time. There's a couple more things I want to get to here trade wise, because I want to get your reaction. And I'm going off right now what the Athletic does. Of course, they do a fantastic job on the Wild beat. They've got a trade tracker and they update it with nuggets and just, I wouldn't call it random stuff, but it doesn't have to be like necessarily trade, reckless speculation, rumors. It's just what's going on with players that might be traded. And let me start you with a guy who actually I thought played a hard game last night, and you could tell something happened, and this drives me crazy. How about the fact that Bill Guerin last week, according to the Athletic, had a heart-to-heart sit-down with Jordan Greenway. And then Jordan Greenway last night, sure as bleep, the last couple games has applied himself a little bit more. I can't take this anymore.
Yeah,
he's 26. He's 26. He's 26. He is, I mean, and he told, I think, Russo, well, I don't really need that. I'm motivated. What are you talking about? I am so sick of this. I am so sick of, you know what I despise? I despise watching last night's game, and it was very obvious he had been talked to.
Mm-hmm.
He's not 18, and he's not playing bantam hockey.
Yeah, I think it's trending towards him being traded. I think Guerin's kind of done with it. This is now the second or third time that Guerin sat down with him and kind of had this, heart to heart and father son like conversation. And Guerin, to me, doesn't strike me as a guy who can continue to have those type of conversations with someone like that. And he gets pretty irritated and impatient. So wouldn't shock me at all. If that's someone too, you can maybe get a third or fourth round pick for. Great. He could be a depth forward on a playoff team that teams always looking to buy by the trade deadline. So whether he's moved at the deadline or maybe even potentially this summer, if applying himself kind of helps boost some value over the last 8 weeks of the regular season and maybe into the postseason, you might be able to get a little bit more for him. But I think they're tracking it. This is also probably the last year of Jordan Greenway.
Here's the second thing. And I actually hadn't heard this until I was talking to our friend Bar Down Beauty, Jesse Pierce, in the press box last night. And she was the first one that alerted me to this. And sure enough, it's here in this trade tracker that involves the Wild. And the headline, the subhead is Goligoski Showcase. Alex Goligoski is drawing into the Wild lineup for the second straight game on Friday, which he did. It's largely because rookie Kalen Addison has been a healthy scratch as Coach Dean Evison tries to get the point across that he has to be better defensively. But with a large number of scouts expected to attend Friday's game with the Stars, it was 11, by the way, this could also be a way for the Wild to showcase a 37-year-old veteran who has sat out more than half the games this year. All right. Let's all consider that for a second. And this is where if this is a Bill Guerin Dino thing or just a Bill Guerin thing, he loses me. Alex Goligoski. If you want to set him free, set him free. Fly, you 37-year-old bird. But if Kalen Addison is not playing because of because they think they might get something for him, I don't know what to say.
Well, that's why I thought Kellen Addison was part of the trade at first, because they were scratching him so they wouldn't risk injury. And I guess makes more sense. And I guess conversely, they're trying to boost up some Goligoski value, but he's 37 and hasn't played in half the games. It's not even the fact like, hey, if he was injured, right? Like if he was hurt for a while and then he came back and I can get that. He hasn't played. He's been a healthy scratch for more than 50%, right, of the games this season. So another guy, if you want to sell him off, you certainly can. And, he signed here because he wanted to be back at home and, kind of even, doesn't he have the full no trade clause or a limited no trade clause too, I believe?
Hold on a second. I'll check that. Keep talking because I think you're right.
because when they first signed him to the bigger deal last year, I think he had the full no trade clause, and I think this season he potentially had another one because he didn't want to be moved since he was back at home, and maybe he moves that with the idea of chasing a cup. He's already won Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh, so wouldn't shock me if I guess he was moved. He has a modified, or no, he has a is NMC, no move clause.
Yeah.
He has
Yeah,
a
for
no
2
move
years.
clause. Yeah,
Yeah. But and you know what? Okay, so I guess he didn't expect to be scratched a lot, which I don't really understand. Like I thought when he signed here, it was just a thank you and to keep like I guess my question is this: what did both parties think? Because I think the Wild was right on this one, dude. You're just not going to play much. I mean, Alex, you're 37. You're from Grand Rapids, correct? So you and your family are home. This is, you're going to play occasionally, and if somebody gets hurt, you'll play. But number one, I'm not going to play him to showcase him because he's not going to get me enough. And this is not the time of year to be doing favors. So, I mean, we talked about this not in depth because it's not worth it. But when he signed the extension last year, we're like, I don't know about this. This is sort of weird, but I guess he wants to retire here. So if now he's like, oh, I'd like to be traded to a contender, I mean, first of all, dude, you ain't gonna play unless again guys get hurt. I just don't understand the thinking at all. I assume that this was completely a message to Kalen, which by the way, by last night, I object to. You can't be this bad offensively and then trying to go, well, we got to have more and the other thing too, Declan, is, and this was apparent again last night, and I don't even struggle with this one, but the way that teams now, and the Wild included, pinch their defensemen in, at least Kalen can get back.
yeah.
So like this is, I just totally, I object to this completely.
I mean, the whole idea to re-sign him last year, because remember that happened also basically at the deadline where they re-signed him, and that was I told you, and I think it basically came to fruition that they did that because they felt bad that they kind of not screwed him, but he played himself out of the 1,000th game last season. So they made the re-signing happen to, all right, because it's a full year next year, and you're like at 998 or something, what it was, when the season ended last year. We'll get you your 1,000th game. We'll make good. What I didn't get was the fact they gave him a 2-year contract, and in both those years, no move clause, full no move clause.
Well, and I literally thought that was so he could stay here, stay home. The wife and kids are here. That's awesome.
Right.
He's from here, and play basically play when they needed him. Like I like nothing that's transpired this season, Declan, has surprised me. But like this now, well, we're gonna play him, and I don't agree with what they're doing with Kalen when they have other players who need the same kickstart, and aside from the 2 games with Dumba, aren't getting it. So like that's what I don't agree with. That's what I don't like. And the other thing last night was, sure enough, Beckman comes up and he plays pretty damn well.
Right.
And we've been talking about bringing guys up to do that for how long now? So like what is the and it's not like those guys are going to come up and save the day, but they're worth playing. And it feels like the being involved in the O'Reilly trade last night certainly paves the way for more like look-sees guys now. My guess is they're going to take on a couple or at least one contract of a veteran again and probably eat that contract and then free that space up, which I agree with. But yeah, the Goligoski thing, the refusal to scratch Greenway and have another conversation with him when it's very clear he doesn't get that. And okay, he plays one hard game. I don't see how these things they all don't seem aligned to me to be the same message, which the ROR trade to me is it's done.
Yep.
Like you're on your own, guys, which
Exactly.
I think they should be, but with youth.
And I think they're going to try to get out of this the best they can with their internal guys. That's what Guerin wants them to do. They want them to fix it internally. So we'll see what happens here. But in terms of them being, buyers, the deadline, they have to figure this out internally. And if that means guys like Adam Beckman come up and play good minutes, maybe they recall a Sammy Walker. Hell, maybe Marco Rossi does come back up here. I don't know.
Scored again last night.
Yeah, another good game for him. So we'll see what happens with them going forward.
Last thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's very clear that tomorrow, 1 p.m. face-off against the Nashville Predators. at the X that Philip Gustafson has to and will start.
Yep.
How do you go about very, I guess, in a dignified way? How do you go about Marc-Andre Fleury now being a clear 2? Because Gustafson is playing out of his mind.
Yeah,
he should have started the Avs game, and this schedule is perfect for starting the same guy consecutive games.
Gustafson's the number 1 now. And I know that's probably a hard conversation for Fleury to accept, who's very prideful and a bona fide Hall of Famer, and hockey royalty is what we called him when he was acquired here, and rightfully so. But I don't think, as much as that's obviously, a difficult thing for probably the Flower to accept because he's a proud veteran, I don't think it's going to be a pouty, woe is me, this is BS type of thing. If anything, it probably pushed him to try to be better, right? Like I don't look at it as something that, oh, this is going to be a problem here. They're upsetting Marc-Andre Fleury. What I'm more worried about is that they'll still coddle Marc-Andre Fleury, and because he is the hockey royalty, the veteran, the Stanley Cup winner, etc., that they still won't give the full turnkey over as the number 1 goalie when Marc-Andre, you're now number 2. It's clear you're number 2. And what a complete 180 of the situation has happened from when the regular season and even summer started when Gustafson was acquired here. I don't think it's going to become cantankerous, but I also think the coaching staff still likes him more because his name is Marc-Andre Fleury.
It's very, very clear that publicly, and I just wonder how deep this runs too, okay? Publicly, from Dean on down, they have been told whenever you talk about Gustafson or the goaltenders, you bring both of them up. Matt Boldy was asked last night about it. And I mean, this is a game where Gustafson was the number 1 star. I think he made 29 saves, but stood on his bleeping head. He made some incredible saves.
Awesome.
His ability to square up to the puck is phenomenal. And Matt Boldy said, yeah, Gus playing great, said all the right things about Gus, and then said, but we trust both our goaltenders. There's no need to say that right now.
Yeah.
Like that, but people will say, well, of course that's what he's going to say, but that's the theme. Like, it's clear they've been talked to about how to talk about this. And what I am curious about is, okay, if that's the public theme, that's fine. It feels like it runs deeper than that.
Yeah, and they're not going to go out there and blast it, but I think they have to accept that, hey, Philip Gustafson's our better goalie.
You don't need to, going back to Dean on Wednesday night, you don't need to say, oh, Flower played well. Flower, yeah, he struggled. Just say he struggled. I worry about Dean sometimes that what he says publicly is not just for us. It's because that's how he sort of feels. And I'm not saying that you have to rip Fleury. I am not saying you have to say anything disparaging. You shouldn't. But you also don't have to bring him up every time you're asked about Gustafson. That gets weird to me. All right.
All right, man.
That's all I got.
Hit the subscribe button for daily Minnesota sports entertainment right here on this YouTube channel. We'll be tracking any more trades that potentially go down Wild back in action on Sunday afternoon as well. Heading over to Purple Daily Minnesota Vikings entertainment. You got Purple Access with Chip Scoggins out on this Saturday. You have Bent Line tomorrow afternoon with a couple great Vikings fans also there as well. Full strength, God willing. Fingers crossed on Monday with Mackey, Judd, and myself. We'll be talking to you soon.
There's no room for petty bull.